Hello everyone, my name is Chantel, and in this video I will be demonstrating how to use Active-HDL's Accelerated Waveform Viewer. So this is a high-performance tool that's dedicated to reading and generating a graphical view of simulation data, which allows us to see how the design would work before implementation. So let's jump into it. The first thing we're going to do is that we're going to head on over to Help and open an example. Underneath Samples in VHDL Designs, you're going to see the Frequency Meter workspace, and we'll open that. And before we can compile and simulate, let's head over to Tools, then Preferences. Make sure that Read is checked under Enable Access in the Access to Design Object settings. Click OK when you're done. Now we can compile all, and once that's successful, we can begin our waveform simulation of the test bench. You can do this two ways. One way is with the asim and wave command in the macro file or in the console. We'll be doing it the second way by initializing simulation from a top-level entity. We're going to set this test bench file as top-level entity by heading on over to the frequency meter library and setting it as top-level. And then now we can initialize our simulation. Now we can open up a new waveform view and add our signals to it. You can add signals using the signal list from the bottom window of the structure tab, or you can drag and click from the top level design as well as right clicking and adding to waveform. Once the signals have been added, click on Run. You can now see the waveform has been updated with the simulation data from the test bench. In the waveform view, the signal grid pane is on the left side. Here you can add more information columns by right clicking on the top row. And you can sort your signals by the information of the columns. The waveform view is on the right side. You can zoom in and zoom out of the view with the zoom in or zoom out buttons, as well as using the control button with the scroll wheel. There's a zoom to fit button that fits all the waveforms into one view, and you can also zoom by a specified range. There's also a zoom mode which allows you to click and drag over an area you want to zoom into. If you wanted to add a list view or more waveform views for other signals, you can do that here with the Insert Wave or List View buttons. We'll insert a new list view, and just like our current waveform view, you can add signals into it the same way. You can see that both the values of the signal grid and the list view update simultaneously as you drag the cursor along the waveform. To close the list view, just make sure that you click on it as the active view, and you're going to head on over to close active view. Now with the waveform view, Active-HDL gives you multiple ways to mark or track parts of the waveform. You can add multiple cursors and lock them in place if you'd like. Your active cursor will be red, and you can see that the distance between two cursors updates in real time as you move them around. If you want to measure between 2 points, you can also do that with measurement mode. You can measure between 2 points on one signal, or even 2 points on two different signals. Another way you can mark your waveform is with bookmarks. You can move your active cursor over a certain point and click on Toggle Bookmark. Or you can also just add a bookmark by clicking on a point in the timescale. You can use mark mode to create a highlighted area over a time and line range. You can go to Show Marks List, and it'll have all your marked areas listed with their time range and line range. Clicking on them will make the waveform zoom into that area. And lastly, we have comment mode. When you go into comment mode, you just click on a part of a signal, and from there, it'll generate a comment box right above that point of that signal. You can also make a global comment as well by just clicking on the timescale. Now when navigating the waveform, Active-HDL's Waveform Viewer has multiple tools for that as well. If you go to the bottom right hand corner of the waveform view, there is a Select Browse Mode button. Clicking on that will allow you to navigate through the waveform based on bookmarks, difference marks, edges, events, and even your cursors, measurements, and comments. You can also use the Select Browse Mode button to navigate to a specific time period of your waveform, or you can use the Go to Time button on the toolbar. If you have a lot of signals and you need to find one of them, you can just head on over to the Find Signal button and then type the signal that you're looking for. When you do that, it will highlight the signals that match the case that you were looking for. You can also find a value on one signal using the Find Value tab right here, or go to the Find Value button. From there, you just type the value that you're looking for, and then from there, it'll navigate through all the values that it can find on that signal. And with multiple ways to navigate through the waveform, there's also multiple ways that you can group signals together to make the Waveform Viewer a lot easier to read. One way to group these signals together is by virtual bus. Select your signals, right-click, and go to Create and create a virtual bus. From there, it will duplicate those signals, and you can see that that virtual bus displays on the waveform view all their values on a singular signal line. Another way is by grouping them by virtual group. Same method, just go right-click Create and do virtual group instead. It'll group those signals together, or it won't duplicate them. You won't see all their signals on one singular line, but you can see all the values of them when you expand that group. And the last method is to create a named row. Same thing, you just right-click Create, but click on Named Row, label your named row, and then from there you can just move all the desired signals underneath it. The Waveform Viewer also allows you to edit the properties of a signal. You can just right-click and head to its properties or hit Alt-Enter together. You could change the radix value displayed as well as the signal's notation. And in the Display tab, you can change its height and its color, and as well as the shape of the waveform. In Analog, when you switch it to Analog, it will show the physical changes of the waveform instead of the literal values. If you want to label certain values in your signal, you can do so by checking off this Use Alias box. From there, we'll go to Edit Aliases to create a new alias name. Type in a value and assign that value a mnemonic. Once you're done with that, make sure that the signal is using that alias name and then hit OK. From there, you could see the value has been changed to the mnemonic that it was given. With the signals in the Waveform Viewer, you can also compare them. Just click on the two signals of your choice, and then you're going to click on Compare Selected. After adjusting your settings, hit Compare, and from there, the compared signals will be grouped together and you will be able to see all the difference marks. These difference marks indicate all the differences that the two signals have between each other. And since the waveform simulation data are saved into Active-HDL simulation database as a .asdb, you can actually compare two waveform files. Just click on Compare Waveforms and select the waveform file you want to compare. And if you want to save the current configuration of your waveform view, you can just save as a .awc file, which is a waveform configuration file. And that about wraps up this tutorial. I hope you guys found this helpful, and thank you guys for watching.